Let us take some time now to settle into a time of worship and togetherness. I know we have a lot of visitors today, so let me just say up front, I am not the Reverend Tamara Casanova Suzuki. She will be back next weekend. I am the student intern, the almost minister, who has 11 weeks of school left to go. Or as someone said, that's only 77 days. And I said, I'm not ready to start counting that quite yet. So our opening words this morning were written by Antonio Machado. Last night, as I was sleeping, I dreamt, marvelous error, that a spring was breaking out in my heart. I said, along which secret aqueduct, O water, are you coming to me? Water of a new life that I have never drunk? Last night, as I was sleeping, I dreamt, marvelous error, that I had a beehive here inside my heart, and the golden bees were making white combs and sweet honey from my old failures. Last night, as I was sleeping, I dreamt, marvelous error, that a fiery sun was giving light inside my heart. It was fiery because I felt warmth as if from a hearth, and sun because it gave light and brought tears to my eyes. Last night, as I slept, I dreamt, marvelous error, that it was God I had here inside my heart. Let us settle now into a time of worship and togetherness. And as we do that, know that this morning, as you opened your order of service, you saw that we are going to be talking about that topic that makes so many others of us blush, human sexuality. And so I encourage you to be gentle with yourself, because not everybody has had positive experiences. Take care of yourself and take care of one another in this time, and we shall get through it, I promise.
Well, it sure is a pretty sight from up here. Good morning. When I came to Live Oak last October, I received the warmest welcome that I've ever had from a church community in my entire life. At least, and I mean at least, 15 people came up, welcoming me, chatting, and then asking me to return. And then I received a follow-up call from Carter, which sort of sealed the deal. It was an amazing blessing. And as I was new to Santa Barbara, just having left my home of 45 years in New Hampshire to be with my son and grandson, and had spent the 6 months before recovering from back surgery, it was a pretty lonely time, and as I felt like my spirit was breaking. Your welcome and affirmation that there was such good heart here and care became a healing balm for my spirit. I am a pretty friendly sort of person, and I step out easily. And I'm really glad that, for all of the activities that this church includes and offers. I'm so grateful for the Buddhist Sangha, because I also left that in New Hampshire, and it's been quite a blessing. And then the other activities, more and more blessings. And I have to say, the sermons, they are an inspiration plus. There's so many ways to enrich a life here. In my church in New Hampshire, there was a sermon seminar for members interested in providing a Sunday sermon. And one of my colleagues presented a reflection on the importance of trees and woods in our lives. Lou had us imagine different uses of wood and then disappeared them. And what would our life be like without them? So I'd like to capitalize on that idea. I wonder what would happen if parts of Live Oak disappeared. Imagine Sunday mornings with no greeters or warm welcomes. Imagine our minister didn't show up, or you, as her backup, providing one of the provocative and powerful sermons. Imagine all of the wonderful music disappeared. Imagine that this sanctuary did not exist. Imagine that the deep spiritual aspect of this community was no longer present. And imagine that there were no opportunities to serve, to love, and share our joys and concerns. And imagine that there were not enough resources to sustain this place. Live Oak is a place of deep spiritual connection and love. Mother Teresa once said, "Love without action is meaningless." And as we reflect on this time of stewardship and what Live Oak means to each of us, let's consider participating financially at the level that we are most comfortable with. And let us continue to consider how we can participate in serving this church and its community. And let us consider how we can participate in maintaining the loving and alive spirit that exists here so strongly. And as one of our songs that we're going to sing in a few minutes says, "From thee I receive, to thee I give, together we share, and from this we live."
And prayer. We'll offer you a short guided breathing meditation this morning. Let this be a time of gentleness. Let this be a time of kindness and a time of deep care. May my words fall upon you this morning as blessing. Breathe in to this body that you have. Feel the coolness of the air as it enters into your body and expands your lungs. Feel it nourishing you, and then feel it depart. And as you breathe in again, feel your skin. This is your body, the one that you have been given. The inside of your body, the part that is underneath your skin, this belongs to you and to you alone. Feel the internal body. Fill it with your breath. Feel your life responding. You get to take up that whole space inside of your body. Feel now your skin. This skin separates you from the world, but it is the way in which you interact in the world. Let this be a place of safety, where you are in your own body and you know without a doubt that here you are safe. And you are loved. Breathe in, breathe out, and let the silence be. Amen. So I had the blessing of being raised in a loving and kind home in which my parents were affectionate with me, and my brother and I knew without a doubt that we were loved. When I was 7, my mother gave me a book that told me about sex, that it was something that mommies and daddies did and could sometimes result in babies. In these ways, my parents did more than some. They did more than some on the road to helping me become a well-adjusted adult, able to create and sustain healthy, intimate relationships with others. And they were not perfect. There was much they didn't say, and much they didn't do. And in that silence, our social order filled me with the shame and the guilt that all of us swim in. That shame and guilt that runs rampant in American culture and can be quite toxic to our expression of intimate sexuality. If I had had the opportunity to participate in the Our Whole Lives Sexuality Education program that we offer in this community to our young people, I have a feeling that my journey from shame and guilt to health might have been a little bit less confusing. I can remember landing at UCSB and realizing how little I actually knew. And I turned to the one friend I knew had the best answers, my friend Ginger, who happens to be a cradle Unitarian Universalist and a graduate of the entire OWL program. And she was equipped to handle not just my specific questions, but more importantly, she could model for me how to talk about sexuality in open, honest, and vulnerable ways. Those talks were deeply empowering to me as a young adult. And it was from that sense of empowerment that I went on to further educate myself by enrolling in that ever-famous class at UCSB, Human Sexuality, Sociology 52A, I think it was called. 52B? There was 2. There's one and then a second one. And then I went on to work as a volunteer in the Student Health Center as an HIV/AIDS educator. And then by the time I graduated in 1996, I knew what I wanted. I wanted to work for Planned Parenthood, and within a few years of graduation, I landed my dream job. And I spent the next 5 years in and out of classrooms from 6th grade through high school, teaching about sexuality, reproductive health, intimacy, and all of the things that are related to that as we become adults. And my time at Planned Parenthood was rich and productive personally and professionally, and I'm still in contact with several of my coworkers who have become great confidants and wonderful friends. So while it would be a stretch to say that the OWL program is the reason that I am standing before you today and able to talk openly, I think it is fair to state that when we offer the OWL program, the Our Whole Lives Sexuality Education program, which we will call OWL, we never know who might be impacted. We never know who might be helped. And help is seriously needed in our culture when it comes to expressing and affirming our sexuality in life-affirming ways. For our current social and political climate is toxic to healthy sexuality. Our youth are bombarded with messages in the media that tell them they are only as good as their next sexual encounter and that their bodies had better be both youthful and beautiful if they wish to be happy. Our current president boasts of grabbing women and engages us in bathroom wars while claiming that these acts will make us safer, when actually those acts increase the likelihood that our most vulnerable populations will be targeted every time they have to use the loo. However, many women, myself included, have a solution for that. And I will wear it because this is going on the internet. I might get too hot and need to take it off, though. Marvin Ellison, who's a sociologist, wrote in his book, Making Love Just, that, quote, "Sexuality has a history, some of which is oppressive. And because sexuality is political and cultural, not just personal, we need a social ethic. We need a social ethic in order to examine how social structures and belief systems affect sexuality for good or for ill." He goes on to argue that what holds us back from creating this ethical framework has been an ambivalence about the injustice at the heart of our social order. An ambivalence that fails to notice that we live in a patriarchal marriage culture. A marriage culture and a social model that prescribes traditional gender role expectations and hierarchical power dynamics, and results in inequality based on gender, and often in gender-based violence. It also results in an ambivalence that makes our sexuality education programming that's offered in the public schools be heavily weighted towards the consequences of sex rather than the joys of sex. And we have an ambivalence that often shows up as exhaustion at the sheer magnitude of the work it will take to dismantle unjust and unsafe sexual systems that target vulnerable people and silence the rest of us. There are so many ambivalences that cover up the injustice that we live with daily. Ambivalences around race, sexual orientation, homophobia, economics, and all the other ways in which we may be exploited. I agree with Marvin Ellison. We need a different ethic. And it's hot. I can't handle that. That's too much. Luckily, to find this ethic, we need look no further than our own denomination. Decades ago, the Unitarian Universalists got together with the United Church of Christ and crafted a plan to upend the world. Enough, they said. We will not lay silent in the face of injustice and the suppression of joy. We will take a stand and carve out a space for ethical sexuality. Out of this conviction of spirit, the first faith-based, comprehensive sexuality education program was crafted. Now known as Our Whole Lives, this program has saved countless lives by providing accurate, fact-based health information about all aspects of reproductive health, from basic anatomy and contraception and disease prevention to the meaning of consent and how to get help if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse. But they did not stop at the halfway mark. They went to the other end of the spectrum and took a stand for the beauty and the joy that is possible in intimate human connection. Intimate human connections that far exceed having sex, which in this society is so often narrowly defined in heteronormative ways. They acknowledged and celebrated that as human beings, we are embodied. We live in bodies and we exist in relationship to ourselves, to each other, and to the God of our understanding. Let's break that down for a moment. We're in relationship to ourselves, to each other, and to the God of our own understanding. First, we live in a body. Sociologist Kate Ott posits that, quote, sexuality is intrinsic to our being, so intrinsic that we cannot understand ourselves apart from it. She goes on to write that no single definition of sexuality could be completely accurate in its comprehensiveness, while still being truthful to its particularity. To be embodied is to be human, and to be human is to be sexual. In the OWL program, we offer an understanding of our sexuality that includes 5 circles: sensuality, intimacy, sexual identity, sexual health and reproduction, and sexualization. Each of these areas is informed and expressed based on an individual's personal and family values, and supported by our collective values as a Unitarian Universalist community that teach us that each of us has inherent worth and dignity. Our sexuality is first and foremost expressed in how we care for our own bodies. This includes everyday acts of caring for our bodies, from brushing our hair and trimming our nails, to nourishing our bodies with food that supports its growth and development. Sadly, in this culture, we are taught to be suspicious of self-care, that it might be a sign of vanity. But as Parker Palmer writes, self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer others. Anytime we can listen to true self and give the care it requires, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. We are called first to care for ourselves, to be in sacred relationship to ourselves, wholly and unconditionally our own best ally. Second, we are called to be in relationship to one another. We are embodied and we are relational. With embodiment comes vulnerability, and we experience that vulnerability in relationship with one another. This relationship of giving and receiving begins in our infancy. It starts with how our parents care for us and is continued, and we care for others. The ways in which our parents feed and clothe, care, and love us, these acts lay the foundation for our future intimacies. Babies know this. If you've ever watched a baby when it's done nursing, they pop off their mother's breast with a big smack of their lips, a smile, a burp, and a sigh before they fall off into blissful sleep. It's an act of deep intimacy, deep care, and it changes them for the good. Now, not all of us have that at the core of our childhood experience. And if we didn't get that, there are many ways to care and love yourselves so that that wholeness that is at your core can be revived and renewed. It's not a one-stop shop. It's a lifelong journey. We are embodied, we are relational, and we are communal. We are called to be in community with one another. While many religious communities continue to understand sexuality as a worldly distraction from the virtuous life, or as something that is wholly and completely separate from religious expression, communities like ours here at Live Oak know that sexuality and spiritual growth are interconnected with one another, and to feed one is to feed the other. When we act with care and love with and for ourselves and each other, we deepen our connection to the sacred heart of the world. This connection to something outside of ourselves is critical, because it is that connection that helps us to know and understand that no matter what has happened to you or may yet happen to you, that there is a part of you that is always whole. There is a part of you that is always whole. An embodied and relational wholeness resides at the core of our being. Caring and cultivating this is not a finish line, but it is a state of being that is to be cultivated, sustained, evaluated, and pursued throughout our entire lifespan. This brings us to an ethical understanding of sexuality that invites us to stand firmly on a spectrum. One end of that spectrum stands strongly against abuse, anti-abuse. The other end of the spectrum is one that is strongly sex positive. We don't have to choose. We can be both. And when we make the choice to be both, we come to the center. And in that center is sexual integrity of self, of others, and of our community. When we forge an integrated sexuality that is filled with integrity, we change the world. To live with sexual integrity is at once both deeply personal and radically communal. It is, as feminist writer Mary Hunt observes, a state of observing that I feel whole and that other people tell me I seem whole. And this, I think, is the deep heart of our faith-based curriculum, ensuring the wholeness of every body. It is radically inclusive and life-affirming, and in this way it is both salvific and redemptive. We don't often talk about salvation and redemption in our community, but OWL is both a source of salvation and a road of redemption. It is salvific because when we affirm the wholeness in our youth, we prevent countless harms and build joyfulness into the fabric of their lives. And it is redemptive, because when we break our silences with the young, we reclaim wholeness for ourselves. And it is from our wholeness that we may build a new way forward. It is from our wholeness that we build a world in which all people are invited to participate in the dance of life, not just free from fear or harm or persecution, but free to let their wild and precious souls enjoy the better parts of being human on their own terms. A wholeness that is both wholly untouched and absolutely holy. When we offer the OWL program, we not only save lives, we also speak into that ambivalence that I mentioned at the beginning. We speak to the ambivalence of a patriarchal marriage culture, and we shift the conversation about gender roles, sexual identity, and orientation. The goal is a non-patriarchal society in which the gender of who we love and how is hardly a concern, because what matters in a relationship is the character of that relationship, and whether or not the parties are treated with respect and care and are affirmed in their shared humanity. When we offer the OWL program, we speak to the heteronormative bias that singles out our LGBTQ siblings for violence and persecution. And we draw a line that says, no more. The goal is a social environment in which we all can embrace the fluidity of gender expression, identity, and sexual orientation that exists in each of us. We create a place and a space where we are ever more free to be fully ourselves, without shame, guilt, or fear. When we offer OWL, we speak to that ambivalence, that view that holds women as objects, that objectifies women as objects of desire rather than subjects in their own story. Subjects capable and desirous of being in charge of their own lives and their own joy. The goal is a society in which women and girls grow up with their bodies, minds, and spirits intact. When we do all these works and all of the other works that we are committed to in social justice in this community, we begin not only to live in and to create, but to experience beloved community as relational, embodied, and whole beings, capable of giving and receiving love and affection. And then the final ambivalence falls. The ambivalence of exhaustion that tells us that we are not up to the task ahead, because we realize we are up to it. And we do have the resources, because we know how to nourish ourselves. We know how to nourish ourselves and one another from the well of life that is ever flowing. And once we do that, my friends, then the way forward may not be easy, but it is more joyful. And we may build that world in which each of us has our deepest need to be seen, to be known, to be heard, and to be blessed. Reside freely and joyfully at the core of our beings, in our relationships, and in our community. We are all holy. We are all blessed, and we are all welcome here. May it be so. May it be so. May it be so. Amen.
Today we're going to have a half basket in support of our friends of the Islamic Society of Santa Barbara. Many of you know that we have the privilege of being involved in the interfaith community and are particularly connected with our Muslim friends as we have marched with them and worked with them, worshiped with them, and have them worship with us. You'll see our banner standing on the side of the love is really a great emblem to the interfaith community of justice and coming together. Just exactly a month ago today, at 9 o'clock in the evening, there was a fire that occurred at their interim mosque on Ward Drive. The bad news is that it basically wiped out their facility and lots of water damage. The good news is the fire did not start in the mosque portion of the building, started in the portion of the building exactly across from it. It was an accidental electrical fire. But nevertheless, it was something of great impact to our friends in this society and to their future. That's the bad news. The good news is that just 4 years ago, they got approval for their mosque, their permanent mosque. It's going to go near the roundabout on Los Caneros, just exactly a mile from my house and in my neighborhood. And I'm delighted to have them in my neighborhood 3 miles from here. This was the approval before the city council. Just early March, the actual movement of the ground began, as you can see, and they are now in full development of the property with targeting to have the completion being just 1 year from now. So our Muslim friends who have for 14 years struggled to get approval and to have their own home, their own religious home in the Santa Barbara area, will have that soon. So today we take a collection, a half basket, in support of them, in support of helping them through the challenges and the costs associated with moving now into another temporary mosque in the facilities that. And when I talk about a temporary mosque, they have a weekly or daily meetings where they do their 5 prayers. This is not the facility that is actually where they worship on Friday. Currently that's in the community center and will continue to do so until the mosque is complete. So we ask you now, as we take the collection, to think about our friends in the Islamic Society, welcome them into our neighborhood, and to contribute as you see fit. Thank you.
Standing for the benediction, join hands if you are comfortable. Your homework this week, this morning at coffee hour, is to take good care of yourself. Take good care of another. Get someone a new cup of coffee. And ask them if they want a hug. But don't force a hug. All right, ask. We are a consensual community. Our faith in this congregation is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity. May the blessings of love be upon you. May love's peace abide within you. May love's presence illuminate your heart now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. And blessed be. And now, as we extinguish the light of our communal chalice, our service truly begins. We